The Dukes of Dice are brought to you by Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, Game Toppers, substitute reviewers, and listeners like you.
Welcome to the Duchy. It's time for another episode of the Dukes of Dice podcast, a proud member of the Dice Tower Network.
Coming to you from the Duchy of the Duke City, Albuquerque, New Mexico, and the Gateway City, St. Louis, Missouri, it's The Dukes of Dice, a podcast about board card and occasionally role-playing games. Today, the Dukes review Teotihuacan from Board and Dice. Then they'll look back at the review of Clans of Caledonia in their Dukes Double Take. And now, the Dukes of Dice.
Hey everybody, welcome back to the podcast. This is Sean.
And Alex.
And this is episode 194, which we're calling TeotiTartan. TeotiTartan. Am I just losing it? Am I having a stroke, Alex? What is that?
No, you're saying it correctly, because it's referencing tartans, which is a Scottish thing.
Yeah, it's the pattern, right? It's the pattern of the kilts.
Okay. Is it the pattern? I thought it was I thought it was a kilt version, but I guess not. Hang on, I'm going to look up what tartans are. You're probably right. Yeah, it's a pattern. You're right. It's a pattern.
Yeah, it's the pattern. There you go. Anyway, this episode was named by our buddy Rob Rouse from Blue Peg Pink Peg. We name all of our episodes with the help of our awesome listeners and guild members over at our Board Game Geek Guild, guild number 2008. So good job, Rob. And we'll give you the rest of the runners-up later in the episode. So Alex, how you doing? We had a rough night the other night. You and I.
I wanted to be the one to bring this one up first, and then you spoiled it. I was gonna accuse you of being biased against halflings, especially halflings in the custodial services industry.
No, my best friend is a halfling, so.
Are they?
Yeah.
Okay. Ellie's a halfling?
What? No. What? No, he's a Sasquatch, actually.
So what we're referring to is during our D&D campaign, there is a certain beloved by me, character.
By you.
Mopsy, who started off as an MTC. He's the deckhand on the boat that we were sailing somewhere with. I don't want to spoil this campaign. It's part of Tomb of Annihilation is what we're playing. Is that right, Sean?
Yep.
So we're on a boat, and my character, who is a half-orc bard, Thok, who likes to rock, met up with Mopsy. And Mopsy Buckets, by the way, is his full name. We started playing together. We started jamming out. Mopsy would be on the buckets. I would be playing on my squeeze box. And we became fast friends to the point where we started bringing Mopsy on dangerous, deadly missions he is thoroughly and wholly unqualified for. And Sean, for whatever reason, Mopsy has done something to grievously offend Sean or his character, Mervis.
No, I don't have a problem with Mopsy. I have zero problems with Mopsy.
Then why are you trying to kill Mopsy?
Because it's Mervis's hatred for Thok.
Then why doesn't Mervis try and kill Thok?
Because you're a PC. I'm not going to kill a PC.
But you're going to kill an NPC who might as well be a PC?
Absolutely.
Well, in any case, Mervis has been subtly, or not so subtly, trying to off Mopsy. And this played out in a battle with a bunch of fire newts where Mopsy was engaged with one and accidentally was hit in the back with an Eldritch Blast.
Yeah, accidentally.
Followed by an apology no one believed, by the way.
Well, hold on. And then the fire newts were coming at me, right?
Yes.
And so I managed to Crown of Madness one of them, which basically I mind control it, and I was going to go have it attack Mopsy. But then that fire newt got killed before everyone could realize who its target was.
Right, which was good for you because it would have been very, 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 very obvious what you were trying to do had that gone through.
Well, and here's the problem. So for the most part, I'm a very deceptive character. I have +5 to deception. And so that should cover me. But as I did it, I'm like, whoops, sorry, Mopsy. And no one believed that. But then you and I had a showdown at the end.
Yes, and then I absolutely believed you.
Because I did a crit natural 20 to be like, oh, it was a mistake. I'm so sorry. Blah, blah, blah. So, but yeah, you were a little annoyed, Alex.
Well, and then it wasn't just you. Then there was another party character who decided to try and get in the action of ending Mopsy, which is where we ended our session. So Mopsy basically standing in a door, having accidentally creaked it open a little too hard, and awakening a group of fire nuke guards inside. So Lindsay, not cool. Thank goodness for Suzanne, my sister in the game, who has done yeoman's work saving the life of Mopsy Buckets.
She wasted a spell
A heal spell slot. Oh, yeah, absolutely.
On a freaking NPC. By the way, by all accounts, Mopsy died. Mopsy died, and then I think Aaron saw like the tear start to come out of your eye. And he's like, well, actually, he's unconscious. That's how it works for PCs. And for beloved NPCs who are practically PCs, sure.
Aaron's warning to me, though, at the end of the session was, Alex, I want you in the interim to consider how much you, Alex, really care about Mopsy. Just consider how much you really care about Mopsy. And maybe take that into account for next episode, next time we pick this up. So poor Mopsy, it's uneven, it's unfair. He's just trying to be an NPC in this PC world. Mopsy Buckets.
Well, hopefully he doesn't have 8 more lives.
Yeah.
Hopefully the next Eldritch Blast will be the one that puts him down.
The other piece of news to update, Abby, my girlfriend, appreciated all the kind words from folks following her no holds barred scathing review. I think a future name for the segment should be Keeping It Real with Abby. Something like that. I don't know, or Reality Check with Abby. I'm open to suggestions. We name things through the guild, so I guess put a name suggestion in the guild if you're so inclined. But this morning, actually, not right before we started recording, actually hours before we started recording, she was in a bit of an accident on the freeway. We had some icy weather here in St. Louis. Got rear-ended, knocked into a median. Her car's probably totaled. We'll figure that out later. But she's fine. Everything's fine. She had some macaroons, but there's a great place in town. So she's gluten-free, which didn't come up in the interview. And there's a great place in town called La Patisserie Choquette. And macaroons happen to be gluten-free. So it's sort of a get well thing. I scooped up a half dozen macaroons.
Oh, okay. It seemed like a very non sequitur, like, she was in a terrible car accident, but she had macaroons. Upside. I mean, it's a very, very Alex, like, chain of thought there.
Oh, and it was an uninsured driver, so get your insurance, everyone. If you're a Dukes of Dice listener and you're uninsured and driving on the roadways, get some insurance, because that's not cool.
Go to libertymutual.com and enter promo code Dukes 2019.
That is actually my insurance company. So, hey, we have gone entirely too long without talking about games other than fulfilling our occasionally role-playing games section of the podcast. Yeah. Sean Ramirez, what have you been playing?
Well, that's good, because I was stalling because I've played very little. Not to say I've played very little. I've actually played a lot, but nothing that's like entirely worth talking about here in our recent plays section.
Whoa, geez. That's going to put the next games you're about to talk about on blast.
No, because, okay, let me tell you why. So here's the first grouping, right? Hey, I've been playing a bunch of Magic the Gathering Arena, Alex.
Yep.
Shocker. I'm not going to go into that. I will say, speaking of Rob Rouse, who named our episode, he just messaged me before the show, and he's like, so, thinking of getting into Arena. And I'm like, yes, do it, because it is awesome. It is super
I'm sorry,
awesome.
How did you tell him to do it?
I actually said, dude, it's awesome. I think it's
I thought you were going to say, do it.
Wait, never mind.
Do it.
Yeah, so actually the preseason just ended, and I got some pretty sweet prizes for my ranking. I need to work harder, though, grinding and constructed. So, yeah. Also, something that's kind of on the horizon, I picked up a copy of Mice and Mystics from Plaid Hat Games years ago, like right when Chewie was born, in anticipation of perhaps one day playing it with her. And so if you don't know about Mice and Mystics, it is kind of a dungeon crawl. It's a little on the lighter side, and certainly a 5-year-old is not going to be able to sit down and play it on their own, but with the assistance of an adult such as myself. I've heard from Jerry Hawthorne, the designer, that it's a good age group to kind of get started. You're kind of asking them what they want to do, where they want their little mouse character to go, and then you kind of interpret the rules and have them roll the dice and things like that. So we'll see. I pulled it off the shelf. showed it to Chewy, and I said, "So, what do you think? Do you want to play this?" Because she's been showing interest in trying some other games, some more adult games. And so I said, "All right, well, I need to go through the rules. Like, I kind of know how to play, but I want to make sure it was a pretty smooth experience for her. And we're gonna sit down and start painting the minis. So we'll see. We'll see if I don't know. We'll see. You know what we have been playing though a lot, Alex, me and Chewy. Emily wants to play 2, the video game. Are you
what?
Yeah. So Chewy, she watches all these terrible YouTube streamers that play like a bunch of like horror games and like jump scare games, and she loves it.
That sounds like some irresponsible parenting.
Yeah, pretty much. So she's like, "Can we get this? Can we get this?" I'm just like, "Oh, Chewy, I don't want this. Like, let's no." Because we're playing. Have you heard of Hello Neighbor?
No, never.
Okay. Well, it's so you're like breaking into this guy's house, and then he like chases you, and you're trying to unlock all these puzzles and stuff. And it's not super scary, or it's not really jump scares. But anyway, she loves that game. She loves that game, and we beat it and whatever. So she wanted this new game. And basically, it's all of these creepy dolls that are like chasing you around this like police station, and you're trying to whatever. She likes to watch me play. So, and she'll kind of help me like figure out, because you can't figure out what you're supposed to do all the time. You're like, so am I supposed to like run in this circle? Am I supposed to find a key? And so she likes the kind of the problem solving of it, which I think is pretty interesting. And then every now and then something jumps out at you and you freak out and you have to restart. So there's that. Also, I'm not going to go into extended discussion of this right now. I did get to play a game called Overbattle that's going to be coming to Kickstarter, I think in
March 19th.
March 19th. And if you're going to back anything on Kickstarter, only back this game. Any game that is up at the same time from any other company, you should not back.
Uh-huh.
But no, it is an Axis and Allies in space-ish game. And I'll talk some more about that probably when we get closer to the campaign. But basically, our buddy Sky Carlisle, he's doing marketing for the game, and he said, and the designer came out. We had a very nice Berkey tabletop set up, and so we got to play on that. Love playing on Berkey's tabletoppers, and so I'll talk more about that at a later date. But that's just sort of a mismatch of stuff, and then I sort of have a new-ish game to talk about, also, sort of.
Cool.
You're up, Alex.
Hey, he passed the ball to me, and I'm going to shoot the rock. That's what I'm going to do. First game I'm going to talk about is a game called Dice Throne. Sean, have you played Dice Throne?
I haven't, but I really want to. This is a Sean game, right?
No, absolutely not.
What?
Absolutely not.
In terms of like a dueling game.
It's not that complicated.
No, I didn't say complicated, but...
I like dueling games. Baseball Highlights is a dueling game.
Okay.
One of my favorite monochromatic wolf games. In fact, my favorite monochromatic wolf game is a dueling game. I like dueling games.
Okay.
I don't like deck construction, but you don't have to do that in this game.
Are you talking about the game Ninjutsu by Monochromatic Wolf?
Yes, that's what it's called. Good job.
See what I did there?
Yeah, I know exactly what you did there.
I don't know if anyone else follows, but...
That's fine. It's not a well-known game.
Confusing our listeners is fine.
Anyway, Dice Throne is at its core a dueling game. I played this over at Jamie's Game Night not too long ago. How it works is you have a deck of cards that you're going to be drawing from. You can spend, I don't remember what the kind of points are that you call them to put those into play or do different things in the game. They're not experience points, but there's some name for that resource you get. There's also different dice. The dice you have will do different things depending on what your character is. They're custom for each individual character. The characters play differently. The cards in your hand will upgrade what different dice combos or different dice do. So we played, and this is not an advisable way to play this game. I will start that off right now. We played a 6-player game of Dice Throne.
Yeah.
And I think this is actually probably a fantastic 2-player game. It could even work as a 4-player game or a free-for-all 3-player or free-for-all 4-player. But we played a team head-to-head 3v3 game. I get the appeal of having that listed as a game mode. Hey, it comes with this number of characters. You can do it this way. But the downtime between turns is just too much for that to be any fun. And the team decisions that you have in the game aren't really relevant because each team, when you're playing 3v3, has a health track. So typically in a head-to-head game, I'd have a certain number of health, you'd have a certain number of health. Whoever got the other person down to 0 wins. Typical dueling game stuff. In the team experience, it's pooled health. So there's no player elimination. There's no knocking people out of the fight. It's just deal X amount of health, X amount of damage, I should say, to the other team, and you win. And how you determine who you target or who you attack is done entirely randomly. So if I'm attacking the other team, I'll roll a die, and 1 to 2, it's the person to my left. 3 to 4, it's the person in the middle. 5 to 6, it's the person on the right. It just wasn't super satisfying at that count, but there was enough going on with the dueling and building the dice combos that you could see the appeal and could see why this thing has been as successful and interesting as it's been. But no, I don't recommend this as a 6-player experience. I hope to get more plays of it at 2-player. This was Season 1, by the way. There is a Dice Throne Season 2 out there.
Right.
So I was playing Season 1. Jamie does have Season 2, so that may get played at some point. I enjoyed the play, just not necessarily at 6 players, if that makes sense. I enjoyed the mechanics that are present. It feels like it's going to be an experience that works. Again, not at 6 players. So that's Dice Throne, designed by Nate Chatelier and Manny Tremblay. I may be butchering that, but yep, that's Dice Throne.
Cool. Well, the last game I'll talk about is not necessarily new, and it's something that's been talked about on the podcast and something that's been talked about sort of recently, and that is Brass. Apparently I always say this incorrectly. Lancashire?
I don't know if the second N's there.
Lancashire?
Lancashire, I think.
Lancashire. Anyway.
No, is it like Lanca?
I don't know.
Shire, I think.
Lanca. It's not Lancan? Okay, anyway.
No, there's no N. There's no second N.
There's no second N.
I just looked that up.
Okay, so it's not like a werewolf like lycanthrope.
No, it's Lancashire.
There are no werewolves in this game, but that would be kind of cool if there were. I would support Brass Werewolf. Brass Ultimate Werewolf.
Brass Ultimate Werewolf, Wits and Wagers Edition.
Yeah, perfect. Let's do that. Let's design that. Right after Space Court, I will design that game.
Space Court. Coming up this week on Space Court, he owes space child support.
So... Let's not talk about child support. I don't like thinking about work right now.
Okay.
Okay. So, love this game, right? Birmingham, which I considered a new game for 2018. Was that my number 3 game, I think, of the year, 2018? Original Brass is fantastic. I think I like Birmingham, the new one, a little bit more. But we went out, Raquel and I, to Dukes of Dice date night on Friday. And I said, hey, let's try this 2-player Brass. The original Brass does not support 2 players, but there was like a fan-made 2-player variant, and the new edition incorporates that in it, and it was awesome. And the best part, you know what the best part was, Alex?
What was the best part?
Raquel loved it. She loved Brass. Like, she was just like all weekend she was thinking about it. She was like, can we play? We should play. So the plan is, after we're done recording, let's wrap this up, Alex. We're gonna play Brass again. She loved it. And it was one of those things where at the end, she's like, oh, I should have done this differently. I didn't think about this. I could have done this. Like, so she was totally in love with this game, which is great because it's a 6 for me. I think Brass is just fantastic. So that's all. That's all I'm going to say about it. Some route building, some resource collection and distribution. And it's awesome. You need to play it again, Alex. You need to play it pretty soon.
I enjoyed my play. It's just tied to a very specific...
I know.
It's it was the game that was the straw that broke the camel's back.
So I wonder, though...
For myself and Jillian, for folks who aren't familiar.
By the way, I did see a Jillian doppelganger at the piano bar.
Yes. Yeah.
This weekend, who looked exactly like Jillian from like the nose up. But because of where I was sitting, her mouth was covered by the microphone and the piano. So that's all we saw, and Raquel and I were like freaking out. Anyway, that's it. You want to talk about any of my ex-girlfriends, Alex?
If you want to, we can.
No, I don't.
It was a whole different set of hairstyle before, because I saw in the old pictures, no beard Sean, and it freaked me out. Facebook shows memories every now and then, and from a few years back, Sean had no beard, and I was like, what? Sean's always had a beard, hasn't he?
Nope.
But he hasn't, and I've known him when he hasn't, and I was weirded out by it.
Yeah. I've had it for like 5 years now.
I know. It's weird.
Weird,
Anyway,
wild stuff.
the last game I'll talk about is another game with dice in the name. You know it was good because it rhymed. Dice Forge. Dice Forge from Asmodee. Sean, have you played this game yet?
No, in fact, at Dice Tower Con, however many years ago, when it first came out, Ellie and Suzanne and I sat down to play it, and it was like early in the morning, and we hadn't had enough coffee or something, and we started to figure it out, and then we're like, no, we're good. Which is a weird reaction from the three of us.
Yeah. Well, this is a dice building game. It's interesting. BGG has it listed on there as a deck/pool building.
Sure.
But it is truly speaking a dice building game. You have two different dice with removable faces that you can replace with other faces that are out in a different supply. You can buy the different faces, or some things that you'll scoop up in other ways will change the faces of your die. At the start of your turn, and basically at the start of everyone else's turn, you will roll the two dice and get the resources from those two dice. Those resources can be money, currency, basically, to I think it's gold is one of the currencies in the game. There's also a red type of resource and a blue type of resource, I believe. Those are the two main resources in the game. Those resources are associated with different areas where you can buy these cards. The cards can do several things. They can get you one-time benefits. They can get you every turn benefits. They can also get you die faces to upgrade your die, and they'll also almost always get you victory points. So on your turn, you are going to either move and purchase one of those cards, or you are going to just straight up buy a die face upgrade. And I think this one, Sean, is going to be in the category of too light for you to enjoy.
Okay.
There's just not enough meat on the bone for Sean Ramirez to enjoy this game. But the gimmick of it, much like Mystic Vale, is well implemented and done well. It is on the lighter end as far as a Euro game goes. There's only 3 resources you're managing. You sort of have to work out the probabilities of what's going to roll more frequently. Which die face do I put that on? That's an interesting decision in my book, and I found the game to be enjoyable. There's different routes to victory. A couple of players at our table did a heavy gold strategy where basically they were soaking in gold and using that on these certain cards to get victory points. I was taking up more of a heavy resource strategy, buying these cards that gave you victory points in big chunks. Not to take that, although the take that level can be increased depending on what cards are available. There's good variability in that different cards can be available in the marketplace for different games. I will tell you though, this has a really well done insert that proves in some cases completely useless. So all of the little die face upgrades are on a market board. They're all in the same orientation at all times. But those, you have to pull them off easily, and they just kind of sit on there. So it's easy for them to pop off and get completely jumbled and mixed up. And it's not one of those games where having a bunch of tokens in a pile is okay. It has to be in a specific order on this board. And so as a result, I was opening the game up and pulling out that set of the little die face upgrades and tilted it up to look at it. And all of a sudden, half of them came spilling out, completely messing up the order and the storage there. It was the most frustrating. I can understand why they had to store it that way, but it proved so frustrating as you're unpacking the game, not knowing that and having it spill out. And I can imagine some people who store that game vertically will find that those tiles get jumbled up afterward too. So it was certainly a challenge components-wise for what they wanted to do with that game, but I don't know if they totally pulled it off. In any case, Sean, this is a weight rating of a 1.92 on BGG, and there aren't many games that are going to fit the bill for you that are Euro-heavy games, or that are meant to be more Euro games, that are less than a 2 that you'll enjoy.
1.93 is my cutoff, so it just misses it. Just misses it.
Just missed it. So yeah, that's Dice Forge. Worth trying if you play with kind of a lighter, heavy crowd. It's enjoyable for sure. I don't know how often I'll come back to it. I'd give it a 4 if we were doing a full review. It's sort of my initial thoughts on it. So that's Dice Forge.
All right, well, that's going to do it for our recent plays, and let's head on over to the news desk.
Sean, do you hear that sound? Man, that's the sound of me wiping off this very, very dusty news desk. Because we have not done this segment in a very, very, very long time.
I thought you were going to say that's the sound of hell freezing over.
Oh.
For different
reasons? Because of this next piece of news?
Because of this next piece of news, yeah. But yeah, we are a little rusty.
We are a little rusty. This next piece of news, well, I'm a little rusty too because, hey, I haven't done TV news for more than 2 years.
And it's interesting, I'm actually going to a TV station to record some interviews tomorrow morning.
Is it my former employer?
No, it's KOB.
Is it KOB?
KOB.
Across the street from my former employer. Yep. Oh, boy. Well, if you wanted more views, you should have gone across the street to KRQE News 13. Anyway. Castles of Burgundy Deluxe Edition. I saw this on Twitter, and my heart about stopped. Because, man, has there been a game that more desperately needed this kind of treatment, more desperately deserved this kind of treatment, and hasn't gotten it than Castles of Burgundy? And sure enough, we're going to have it.
Yeah. Yeah, so actually we saw this, or I saw this. Our buddy Todd Kauk, go ahead and correct me, Alex.
Todd Kauk!
Yeah. He posted it up and he tagged us and like, hey, check this out. Yeah, I am super excited about this. Now, so from what I've seen, there's some news about this coming out of Nuremberg at the Toy Fair out there. And from what I can tell, the actual press kit hasn't been published itself, but from what people have seen it are saying, some are saying that it's going to be available in early 2019. Todd had said that it was going to be available in August 2019, so I'm not quite sure. I did a little bit of research, couldn't quite figure it out. It's supposed to include all of the expansions, all of the pre-existing expansions, plus a new one. It's going to have new art, that's for sure. Now, the box art that they show is pretty plain, and not in a bad way necessarily. It's just like a red cover with words, with Castles of Burgundy on it. So it doesn't have the guy looking out over the dukedom or whatever it is. Now, here's the question. It may be deluxe, or it may not be. I think it's definitely going to be upgraded components of some sort, or at least better than the old edition. But whether it's a true deluxeified version or not, I don't know yet. We don't know yet.
Well, yeah, and at the same time, it looks like they're doing another 20-year anniversary edition of Las Vegas, the dice rolling game from Rudiger Dorn. That's a ton of fun. That I need to get a copy of that game. All right. By the end of this show, Sean, you won't be able to tell when I will have bought a copy of Las Vegas.
I had to buy 2 copies of Las Vegas because Chewy accidentally destroyed my first copy a while back. When she was young.
Well.
Yeah.
Bummer. Anyway, yeah, that's exciting news. Are you gonna buy? Is this an Insta buy, Sean?
I don't know. We'll see. We'll see what the price point is.
I don't have Castles of Burgundy, so this might be an Insta buy for me. But also, I'm getting rid of about 20 different board games, so I'm kind of downsizing the collection a little bit. So maybe.
Let me ask you, did you listen to my response?
What was your response?
You said, is this an Insta buy? And I said, I don't know. I'll see what the price point is.
Yeah. I said it might be an Insta buy for me. I don't know.
Okay. All right. No, I was being facetious, Alex.
Oh, okay.
Yes, I'm going to get
Well, I couldn't tell if you were being facetious. I thought you were being serious there.
Like really? Because, okay, I'm not going to spend $300 on a Deluxe Catan. I'm not going to spend $300 on a Deluxe Azul. Would I spend $300? Like, if it were like a super, truly deluxe, I don't think this is going to be a $300 Castles of Burgundy, but yeah, this is an Insta buy. Like I said, I think it's going to be somewhere in the, I don't know, $60 range, $80 range, somewhere in there.
Probably, I think closer to 80 if I had to guess.
Well,
baseless speculation, Alex.
With the expansions, who knows? But yeah, it's one of my favorite games of all times. All time.
All the times.
Yes. So, yeah, I'm super excited.
You know what I'm not excited about? This next piece of news.
Oh.
No, I'm not excited one bit, Sean. So you're going to have to do all the heavy lifting here because I don't like this game.
But you love this game so much.
I hate it. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. Food Chain Magnate. It's an expansion called the Ketchup Mechanism. Ketchup spelled K-E-T, not C-A-T-C-H. Get the joke?
It's actually a pretty good joke.
What's in this stupid expansion for this stupid game, Sean?
Wow. So much hatred. Jeez. So it's a modular expansion. It's still in development, so nothing's necessarily final. There's a chance it's going to add a 6th player, which I don't know that I'm particularly crazy about. Okay, so let me go back. Food Chain Magnate is a pure economic game actually, pretty much no randomness other than how you're setting up the initial board. You set up a modular board of these neighborhoods with little roads, and you are building these fast food franchises trying to appeal to customers to sell your food at the best rate. You hire all of these different staff members. They're going to assist you in different ways. And you achieve milestones by doing certain things first, which give you some sort of ongoing benefit, which is pretty sweet. So, possibly 6-player is what the expansion's offering. New milestones. There's going to be coffee shops and baristas, which looks like it's some sort of bonus as customers are coming to visit your restaurants. They're going to stop off there first. Different buildings, different food types, new employee cards that you'll be hiring, and of course, Ketchup. I don't know exactly what that means, but hey, why not? So if you're interested in this, if you're a fan of Food Chain Magnate, then I think you'd be interested in this. And you can pre-order it now. If you go to splottershop.com, it's 75 euros and it's expected to be out in late 2019. I don't know what that looks like in Europe with VAT. I don't know what that looks like here in the US with shipping. I'm sure it's going to pick up some sort of US distribution. I don't think I'm going to go out of my way to get it early, but definitely as soon as it hits US distribution, I'll pick up a copy. Hands down, 100%.
Bleh. 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 All right, next piece of news. Finally, let's talk about the Kickstarter. Dead Man's Cabal from Pandasaurus, designed by Daniel Newman. Sean, what is this game?
So it's a pretty cool theme. You are a necromancer who is kind of a loser, right? Because no one wants to hang out with a necromancer. Ooh, unless you're Liliana from Magic. She's pretty cool. She's a sweet necromancer. You know who Liliana is, the Planeswalker?
Not a
Alex?
clue.
Yeah, I know. So you want to throw a raging party because deep down, every necromancer is really a party animal. Don't you think? Isn't that your experience with necromancers, Alex?
I have had no experience, personal or even D&D, with necromancers.
You lead such a sheltered life. It's really sad. So basically, if you're a necromancer and you're lonely and you're kind of a loser, you have no friends, why not create your own friends, Alex? You raise the dead to come have a raging party with you. Isn't that a crazy theme?
It's a crazy theme, and I'll have some comments on and thoughts on this in a second, because I'm also looking at the Kickstarter page as you're talking through this. And when I initially glanced at the Kickstarter page, I thought you were describing an entirely different game based on that theme. So,
all right. Well, basically, so it's a phase selection game, so kind of like Roll for the Galaxy, Race for the Galaxy, or San Juan, where you're picking what type of action you would like to take. You're going to get kind of the souped up version of that action, and other players are going to get a lesser version of the action. The order in which those things occur is kind of important. Basically, you are collecting these cards of these undead that you're trying to raise, and then getting the resources, the skulls, to raise them, and then you conduct a ritual to make that happen. It looks really interesting. I like phase selection. That's a really fun interesting mechanic for me, especially when you're really trying to get inside someone's head. You're like, I really need to do this. I need this action to happen, but I need the super version of this action. So is this the time that my opponent's gonna choose that action or not? So I like those mind games in this type of game. So it looks really interesting. I think it looks pretty sweet.
So here's the thing for me. That theme that you're describing, a lonely necromancer who summons up friends for a party. If I'm looking at the style of this game, at least from more the components than the actual art, so more the game board and some of the look of this game, I don't get that kind of wackiness. It looks like a dark, like necromancer game. Then I look at the cards. The card art seems more in line with that theme, potentially. Like you kind of get that across. But there's something that doesn't seem consistent about all of this to me in looking at it, which had me think it was a different game than it was, because that theme is appealing to me. I think that's an interesting, fun theme. But the look of this game, at least from what I could tell, didn't communicate that. Again, it's more the boards and the other components than the cards. The cards themselves communicate that decently. So, yeah, I'm curious. I'm curious if that's had an effect on how the Kickstarter is done. It's certainly funded, so this thing's getting made. It's at $32,000 of its $15,000 goal, with about 15 days left. Sean, are you actually going to back this game?
No. But again, that has nothing to do with whether I think it's a good game or not. I think that if I were actively backing Kickstarters, I think I would probably back this. But again, I've kind of cut Kickstarter out of the monthly budget for various reasons. Well, let me ask you this, Alex. Would you say that at heart, I'm a wacky guy?
And your truest, deepest, darkest self?
Well, not my deepest, darkest self. That's weird. It's weird that you would go there.
I would not, of the many adjectives I would use to describe Sean Ramirez, wacky is not high up there. Now, that being said, your game of the con for Dice Tower Con a few years back was Happy Salmon, which is a very wacky game. Okay. But no, I don't consider you very wacky.
But wouldn't you agree that the persona I have at Empire is different from the persona I have in, say, Court?
I haven't seen you in Court. Maybe you're a very goofy guy in Court.
Wouldn't you assume that to be true?
Yeah, I would assume that to be true.
So sometimes, Alex, when it's business time, right? When you're raising the dead as a necromancer, that's your business time. That's like me being in Court, right? So you gotta keep it together. You gotta project a certain persona, a certain image.
No, I don't think so.
But at heart, he's a wacky necromancer.
I don't think so.
I don't know.
No. I mean, do you agree with me though? Am I off base here?
Ish. Yeah, I think you're a little off base. I don't know.
Okay.
I don't think you're not. It's not a crazy position to have, I suppose, but it's not wacky.
It's not wacky. There's no doubt.
No, your position isn't wacky. Yes.
Oh, okay. Well, neither is the look of this game, but I also don't think that's what they're going for. In any case, I do think it's an interesting project. Take a look at it. Pandasaurus has done good stuff before, for folks who don't know. They're the publisher behind Dinosaur Island and The Mind, as well as Machikoro. Anyway, take a look. Take a look if you're interested. It's on Kickstarter through February 15th, so you've still got a little bit of time to back this if you're interested. And they by the way, this is another thing that's interesting about this project, Sean. June 2019 estimated delivery, which is very quick for a Kickstarter campaign.
Yeah, it says it's 100% ready to print, and they acknowledge, this is a pretty aggressive delivery date. So I think they're pretty confident they're going to hit that. I'll be interesting to see if they do. And by the way, we should mention that the base pledge is $50. We'll get you the game, and all of the unlocked stretch goals, shippings to be calculated later.
There you go. So that's Dead Man's Cabal on Kickstarter for another couple weeks. So Sean, I like recording the podcast with you, but man, it doesn't feel right if I'm not doing it at a proper table. Right now I'm sitting at this dinky square kitchen table. It's kind of cramped. I don't feel like if I needed to roll dice, they just kind of clank around and it just wouldn't be a satisfying experience. So I feel like I could use an upgrade.
Oh, well, perhaps a game topper from our good buddy Berkey would be the right solution to your particular problem, Alex.
Is that right? Well, good thing I actually already have one of those fine things.
Oh, perfect.
And really enjoy using it.
So is this a solution to a problem that you no longer have?
When I move in with my girlfriend Abby, it will be a problem I will no longer have because I'll bring this game topper over here and then I'll have that ready to go either when I'm podcasting or chucking some dice or playing games or whatever else. It can convert the benign kitchen table into a fun gaming experience at a nice, affordable price. And if you order now, every single game topper comes with 5 pounds of Berkey jerky.
Ooh, does it really?
No, I actually don't think that's a deal.
Yeah, we probably shouldn't say that.
Would make me more likely to buy a second one, because that jerky, I can't get enough of that jerky in my life.
Mwah! Is all I have to say about Berkey's jerky.
Also, mwah! That's what I have to say about his game toppers. Berkey, you are a mwah kind of guy.
Be sure to check out Game Toppers over at GameToppersLLC.com. So, Alex, do you recall playing the multiplayer worker placement game Yokohama by our fine sponsors over at Tasty Minstrel Games?
Boy, it was so long ago, and yeah, of course I remember. It was an awesome game, Sean. An amazing game.
Yeah, we both enjoyed it quite a bit. So I was excited to hear that Yokohama Duel, which is all the rage nowadays, take an awesome game and then put Duel on it, and now you've got a sweet two-player game. And I think that's what's going to happen here, don't you?
Oh yeah, no, this looks great.
So this will be coming to Kickstarter in late January of this year, so keep your eyes out for that. Yokohama Duel is a two-player worker placement game that lasts 4 rounds, with each player taking 4 turns each round. The game includes 10 different areas, and each area can be used only once each round. Workers have certain powers, but they can only be used by people with low power. To gain victory points, players must complete the order form, build shops and trading houses, clear custom goods, and dedicate the church. At the end of the game, whichever player has more points is the winner.
So if you fancy yourself a merchant, you might want to go prepare some funds to invest in a copy of Yokohama Duel, coming soon from Tasty Minstrel Games. Sean, I have so thoroughly mastered the game of Onitama. I can beat all challengers. I cannot be stopped, even by you, even by death itself. But is there anything left for me to do in this game? I feel like I'm so good at it. I just need something more.
Well, Alex, I don't know, because you haven't yet seen my wind spirit.
Your wind spirit?
Yes, my wind spirit. I have a devastating wind spirit, Alex, that all should avoid.
Because the wind spirit gonna mess you up.
All of the New Mexican food, Alex, gives me a ferocious wind spirit.
Well, I don't think that kind of wind spirit is maybe as useful as you're thinking. The wind spirit that comes, though, in the new expansion for Onitama, Way of the Wind, can add some pretty interesting possibilities. It's an impassable piece on the board that can move using certain of the technique cards. Some of those cards will make it very, very, very tricky. You can't move into it, you can't move onto it, but it can move into you, and if it does, it switches places with your piece, and if it does that, it might put you in a pretty vulnerable position. So beware of the wind spirit in Onitama Way of the Wind, now available from fine retailers, from our partners at Arcane Wonders. This week, Sean was optimistic, so hopeful that I would play Teotihuacan, one of his favorite games of last year. But then, I did what I typically do, and disappointed him. Here's Sean's review with help from Grumpy Man Matthew and Nick. It's Teotihuacan.
In Teotihuacan, City of Gods, each player commands a force of worker dice which grow in strength with every move. The object of the game is to accumulate the most fame or victory points over the course of 3 eras by building and decorating the temple, ascending on the different god tracks, building housing for the nobility, and gaining in technology. On your turn, you move a worker around a modular board 1 to 3 spaces to activate one of the 8 action spaces. In these action spaces, you will choose to either 1, take an action, which will give you a worker upgrade as well, or 2, you can choose to worship, which will gain you some sort of powerful bonus. One of those can include these ceremonial masks, which you'll use for end-of-era scoring purposes. But this comes at the cost of locking your worker die in place until you spend cacao to release it or take a whole action to release it later. And then the third option is that you can simply gain cacao from the space based on how many other players' dice are present. 3 of the action spaces provide you resources: wood, stone, and gold. How much of each you gain at each space depends on how many dice you have in that location, as well as the lowest value of your dice there at that location. Another location gives you technology upgrades at the cost of gold, which can give you ongoing bonuses when you take certain types of actions. Yet another location allows you to build housing for the nobility, which can increase your position on the Avenue of the Dead track, giving you bonuses and end-of-era fame. There is another location that is dedicated exclusively to worshiping, which can give you the choice of 3 powerful worship actions, but again at the cost of locking your dice that you use. Finally, the last 2 action spaces let you build levels of the temple as well as temple steps at the cost of variable amounts of wood, stone, and gold. This will give you a couple things, including immediate points, which is based on how well you can match patterns. Also, you might get increases in the various god tracks, and then this could also set you up for some end-of-era points as well. Every time you take a main action, your worker will gain experience and increase in value by 1. Once a worker transitions from a 5 to a 6, it ascends, which turns it back into a 1, but then this gives you the option of several powerful bonuses, including unlocking your 4th and final worker. An era will end once a variable number of rounds have taken place. Then players will pay for their workers in cacao, score for their level on the Avenue of the Dead track, score for their place in the building track, and then score for their collection of masks. Once you've done this 3 times, the game is over. You'll also score variable endgame scoring options for those that have qualified by ascending high enough on the god tracks. Whoever has the most fame is the winner, and that's how you play Teotihuacan. Now, let's hear what we think about it. All right, so sitting here with Matthew and Nick, you guys have volunteered.
That's Grumpy Man Matthew, Alex.
Excuse me, Wham Boy, Grumpy Man Matthew, and Nick. So thanks for coming in and helping out with this review, since Alex couldn't play this game for some reason.
Can I say how happy I am that I've had to play this twice?
Yeah, Alex, Matthew is not your best friend right now, so just saying.
Happy to support the Dukes whenever there's a gap.
Alex is a gap, apparently. Okay, so general thoughts on Teotihuacan. Nick, what do you think?
So I jumped into this not really knowing much about it other than that midweight Euro, and was pleasantly surprised. So the initial appearance on the table seems a little bland, but once you get into it, there's an awful lot going on there.
My first game was Nick after he had played a few times, and he cleaned the floor with us, and it was not fun.
That was my second time playing.
I think it only takes 2 times.
But what were your general thoughts of playing?
I thought it was okay. I thought there was a lot of stuff going on, but it didn't all make sense to me until I got to the end. And really, it was just watching what Nick was doing. And so I pretty much just did what he did in this game that I crushed you in. And so that really worked really well.
Okay. That's Alex's biggest fear, by the way, is just having someone copy his moves in a game. For whatever reason, that just gives him hives, and he can't sleep at night thinking of that.
Well, it's not like Nick was in the game that I was copying. I was just taking the things that he did and then transpose that to the state of the board quite effectively, I must say.
Okay, fair enough. Well, for listeners of the podcast, you will know that I really like this game. This was my number 1 game of 2018. It is the spiritual successor to Tzolk'in, which has been one of my top games for a very long time. And there's just so much I really like about this game. And it feels like Tzolk'in. It feels a little bit like Praetor. There's just a lot of different moving pieces, and kind of tongue-in-cheek saying that because there are literally a bunch of moving pieces. But in some ways, it almost simulates the gears in Tzolk'in replaces it with a rondelle. It doesn't have the same effect of actions becoming more powerful. Well, actually, it does kind of. Except it's not the movement of the gears. Your actions become more powerful based on where the dice are at any given time.
Well, and the technology, which can also give you power, plus, of course, the addition and the subtraction of dice. And because there's 2 different things you can do, like you're either paying because there's too many dice there, or you're getting you're either paying cocoa or you're getting cocoa, depending. And so it becomes an interesting way to gain resources and hopefully not lose too many resources. So
The main difference with Tzolk'in and Teotihuacan is the action is taking place on the placement of your worker, not the removal. So you're still doing the same thing of, am I putting it into a place that is heavily weighted versus am I letting it stay on a place till the place is heavily weighted to get that efficiency out of a move?
Right. So let's talk about the rulebook. Now, I don't think any of us actually learned to play the game by reading the rulebook first. I think we were all taught. Were we all taught by the same person? Jared? Okay. So yeah, Jared taught all of us the game. Typically in this type of situation, especially for a game of this weight and complexity, I'll usually go back through the rulebook and just make sure, various things were done right. Overall, I think it's a pretty good rulebook, but it's a pretty lengthy rulebook. It's pretty thick for like a medium to medium heavyweight Euros. 24 pages. I mean, some of that is some solo rules. Some of that is explanation for all the various types of tiles. But it's a pretty meaty rule book. I think meatier than you see for similar games of this way. I don't know. Have either of you guys had a chance to really go through the rule book?
I refuse to read 24 pages of rules, so I make other people do it.
That's pretty much true. A lot of times you'll just give me a game and say, here, learn this. Well, not recently, though. I'm too busy.
So I will say on my second play, we hit a lot of corner cases that forced me to have to pick up the rulebook and go through it, and mainly because I was being slightly combative with Jared, but mostly because trying to make sure that the corner case was actually being executed correctly. So I will say that looking up those corner cases was not trivial, because a lot of times you had to reference 2 or 3 different sections till you got to the sentence and the grammar in that sentence that led you to the answer.
Yeah, you were totally QAing Jared the whole game. It was hilarious. It was great.
Yeah, so, a lot of rule books, I think they're either really strong on teaching you the game, or they're really strong on, like, looking stuff up from a reference point of view, like you were saying with those corner cases. Without having actually learned the game from the rule book, I think it probably does a pretty good job of both of those things. No.
We were able to find the answer to all those corner cases, but I tend to want to start referencing that if my only experience of the rules is from one person teaching it, and now we're hitting corner cases, that makes me want to get the reference right. So those references were all findable, they were just hard to get to sometimes.
And I do want to say that in the game with Nick and Jared, part of the fun was listening to them argue words back and forth. You were about 50-50 right and wrong because of how it was written. So I just want to point that out. It was not always the easiest thing to understand the complexities of the game in the rule book. So there was a lot of back and forth, and we couldn't remember exactly what this corner case worked in and how and when, and like there was just a lot of things going on because it was 2 people's first games. So Matt and I were absolutely confused.
I'll also mention that it's not like we hit all of those corner cases. A lot of times we were close to, well, if this happened, what would occur there in the rules? Well, let's dig into it and figure it out, even though this hasn't actually happened in our game, just because we were interested in trying to get the whole mechanic down. So it was part of that was the technical discourse of trying to figure out what actually the right answer was if a certain situation was to occur.
All right, so what about the components and art? I guess let's start with the art. For me, this is a really interesting looking board. We actually have the board out in front of us. I love how this thing looks. Now, this is definitely prettier to look at than it is functional, which I think is a very fine line. And I think, like Matthew, you're probably going to have a different opinion than me. It definitely is more pretty than functional. But from my perspective, from my ability to just kind of look at the board and see what's going on, it's not problematic for me. In a lot of ways, it reminds me of the board to Lisboa, which is of an equal practical versus pretty end of the spectrum. Lisboa has a lot of like muted like pastel colors, which I really like. And this game, it doesn't have so much pastel colors, but like even the reds, the blues, and the greens seem a little bit more muted. And I think it takes this sort of, what's the right word, Mesoamerican motif look.
In the colors? Are you talking about in the colors or in the iconography?
No, in the iconography, like in the way the whole board is laid out and the way that this temple that you're creating in the center, like everything around it, there's steps leading up to the temple. There are like little like a village or a work site or whatever. I don't know. I think art wise, I think it looks really interesting, and I think it creates some really good table presence. And for me, it's functional enough.
Yeah, I think the art in the book is really good. I think all the art on the board is really good. I think the colors are also very appealing to me. That being said, it's so busy, it's really hard to... I mean, it's not like Kanban bad, which that first edition was rough. Like this, you can definitely see what's going on, but I have bifocals, and so if the colors don't pop, and these are very muted colors, I can't really see things. I can't really see the numbers. I can't really... So for me, having not so great eyes, it's a little bit rough, but I do... Like if you put it on the wall, like you did with your Zolkin, it'd be gorgeous.
I have similar thoughts. I mean, they chose colors that you would think of normally as primary colors like green, red, and blue, but they've sort of like had heavy earth tone influences toning down the colors. So I think what Matt said makes sense, is that putting it on a wall is a piece of art. I mean, the icons match the theme really well. It's very clear that the theme comes out of this sort of Mesoamerican setting. But when you start putting pieces on the board with all of the colors sort of dulled down with a little bit of earth tone sprinkled on them, they don't delineate very well. And I can imagine if you had even just a little bit of a colorblind problem, this stuff would be ridiculous to try to identify.
Yeah, I think so. I think that's probably right. As far as like the iconography goes, I thought it was pretty consistent and pretty clear. So as far as like the iconography on the board is concerned, consistent use of victory points and the improvement of dice, payment of things. The only times where things got a little bit tricky are on some of the various like the temple tiles or some of the discovery tiles. I mean, there would be some that you had to look up to try and figure out. But I think as I've gotten more plays of the game, I've played this 4 times now, and as I've played it, I've had to look those up less and less. Some combination of familiarity and or just being able to recognize what the iconography does. But I think it does a really good job of consistency in iconography.
Yeah, I think the iconography is pretty strong. Some of the symbols look too much alike when you're dealing with the die. I get why they do it, but you have like a die, and then you have multiple things inside the die, and you have to kind of see what those are. And because there's so many small icons everywhere, even on the little temple tiles or whatever, where you said it costs like 1 cacao or 1 wood, it's both brown and it's hard for me to see. So the only problem is there's so much going on and everything is so small. Not terrible, but first game was miserable. I mean, it was bad. The light wasn't even nearly as good as what we're here. In the light, I can see things pop a lot better. But honestly, it's a little small for, like, you really need to be close to the board, I think.
And it's a giant board. So, but yeah, no, you're right. It is kind of hard to see kind of across from the board. And the last game we played tonight, the 3-player game that we played, I was sitting on like an end of it, and you guys had to like move my pieces for me most of the time.
I agree with the consistency comment. I think more often than not, that's like the standard of what's expected in iconography, that it needs to be consistent, where you're having less and less the requirement to look up things in a rule book. So it does sort of the bilingual setup where none of the iconography has English language on it, so it's all just pictographs and very consistent. I mean, I agree with a lot of the statements we just made where we're talking about the size of it versus the size of the board. So until you get the idea of, that blue stand means victory points. So once that sets in, it's pretty easy to identify from across the board.
Can I say real quick, just kind of a quick aside, that so far as, stand-in reviewers, you guys are doing an excellent job of being yes men to me. I just want you guys to know I appreciate that.
Give it time.
We're here to support you, Sean.
That's an old reference. Well, okay, so now let's talk about some of the gameplay. Matthew, what did you think about the gameplay?
I've been thinking about how to answer this. My first game, I really felt there was too many things going on, and it was causing too much AP. And it was funny, like I'm the AP guy in this group. Like I sit there and ponder things way too long, and I get caught. I do not get caught in this game. This is the second, and I don't know if you remember I was not having problems in my first game, and I was definitely not having problems in my second game. Like but the thing is, like, I could never really see the end game. And I think that what I'm realizing is I don't think there's much of an end game here. It was a lot simpler if I just did what Nick did and kind of copied that. I'm like, okay, yeah, that's how you win. I mean, maybe like if everybody did that same thing, then it would be some challenge. But I think there's I'm not saying there's a dominant strategy, but there's definitely some things you need to do straight out. And I think that's kind of a weakness to this game, is like you're probably just going to do a lot of the same things over and over to get the high scores that you want to get. I don't know that there's a whole lot of things you're really going to be doing in this game.
Unless you want to experiment.
So when I look at a game like this, initially I try to develop like a strategy per season or per, not round, but like per cycle, whatever the cycle is. And what I found in this game is you can't think more than 3 or 4 moves ahead. And the number of times I had to as a result of the turn that happened right before me and how efficient those spaces became, had to make a complete pivot, which I think it makes for a really interesting and involved gameplay.
You didn't make a complete pivot. What you did, and it's the same thing I did, which is you had a strategy that you did multiple times throughout when it was optimal, and when you didn't, you did the thing that gave you either cacao, that gives you a lot more longevity to do other things, like taking the double temple action or whatever. And so you became a lot more efficient by saying, okay, well, I'm not going to pay into this. I'm going to take out at this point. And then it gave you a really big bump to do something later on. So you didn't really pivot. All you did is say, well, you know what? This will give me a little bit more that I can, when the opportunity comes up, then I can really hammer this particular action the way I want. So you weren't pivoting.
So to some extent, I think you're right. But if I look at, like, we'll just say 3 of the 5 major scoring mechanisms in the game, and I'm kind of working on those 3. And maybe 2 turns ahead, what I think I want to do is work towards a temple track action, and by the time it gets around to me, now I'm working on constructing the temple for this action, because now the efficiency is there for that. So it allows a little bit of planning, but if you get stuck in your plan and let the game go around the table and then still take that action, you're just going to fall behind by the efficiency curve. And to me, that's really interesting.
So I tend to think of certain games as being somewhere along the strategy versus tactics spectrum. Some games are inherently more strategic, meaning that there's more kind of long-term planning you have to prepare for. Other games are more tactical in that you have to just jump on opportunities as they arise. So like in my mind, like the quintessential tactical midweight Euro is like 5 Tribes. Right? Like, yeah, there's some strategy you have in terms of maybe what gens you're going to collect, Matthew's favorite game, maybe what gens you're going to collect, or whether you're going to go like a heavy vizier strategy or whatever. But for the most part, what opportunities you have on the board with the Meeple Mancala mechanic is what you have.
I don't think it's Mancala, though, is it?
It's kind of referred as a Mancala. Mancala is kind of a rondel, but this is more of you pick up the number of things from a thing and drop them off. And
right, that's Mancala, where you pick up and you drop one off in each one, but this is more a rondel. Right?
5 Tribes. I was talking about 5 Tribes in that sense.
I can't. I blocked out 5 Tribes. I don't.
Okay. Yes. Teotihuacan is not a Mancala thing. No. But my point is that simply that's a very tactical game in my mind. Tzolk'in, I think, is probably farther along on the strategic side of the spectrum, especially once you kind of know what you're doing, and you can plan for that. And so far, my experience with Teotihuacan is more on the tactical side. But I wonder if after I've played this as many times as I've played Tzolk'in, if that may no longer necessarily be the case. I mean, certainly in Tzolk'in, you have a strategy that you're pursuing. And there may be times when you'll say, yeah, I know this is my strategy, but right now this opportunity has presented itself, so I'm going to take that, even though that's not necessarily what I had planned. Here, I think that happens a lot more, but again, that just might be a function of lack of experience. I don't know yet, but I definitely agree. Like, so at the start of the game, I'm looking at what are the 3 temple track endgame tiles. Is there one of those I want to pursue? Is there one of those things that I want to make happen? And if so, am I forcing the red temple track or am I forcing the green temple track? But sometimes it may just be, well, I really need cacao, so I'm going to go up there, and I'm up on the green track, so now maybe I'm more interested in what that end game scoring tile is. I don't know. But I definitely feel like you guys are right in that sometimes you got to take the most efficient action, and sometimes that can either make you pivot or it can make you just take things that you weren't planning on doing because it's, wow, I'm going to get so much cacao if I do this right now.
So I don't think the reason I'm kind of hedging against pivot is because you're still going to do your strategy. It's really not going to shake you off of that strategy because you built up your efficiencies. And what I mean by that is, again, I did what Nick did. So I looked at the technology track and I found the 1 or 2 things that I could get immediately straight out the gate. And one of them was to get me a cacao every time I did a resource action. A point and a cacao is very powerful. And that just set me up so I didn't even care about the green track. And I just focused on the red track. And I hadn't even looked at the end game and I realized the red track actually worked my end game really well too. But like getting that technology early, getting your whatever the Street of the Dead thing where you get the multipliers, like that seemed like a really good way to get. You didn't even do that our first game. But I did, and it just gave me points every phase, and then peppering in the temple building for the optimal times. And I mean, I feel like that's just what you do. I don't know that you vary from that. Maybe you pick a different temple, maybe, but I was able to get pretty far, all the way up on 1 and almost all the way up on 2, like 2/3 of the way through. So I don't know. I mean, I think you're just kind of looking at your tech and just trying to find those things that give you those residual bonuses. I was real interested in seeing if the masks will work. I don't think that's a great strategy, but you had a endgame bonus that worked for that. So it was a good strategy this time. But when we played it, the masks didn't pan out at all.
Well, no, actually, I had an endgame bonus that was actually it didn't coordinate with my masks because there were the three endgame bonuses we had that game were 2 points for every discovery tile that's not a mask, and I still had a good number of those. And then it was what was the one on the green track? It was 5 points for every technology that you have. And then on the blue track, which I hardly ever went to or hardly ever went up on, was you basically score your masks again. And I was collecting masks, but I undervalue the blue track because as you go up on the blue track, you get resources of your choice. As you go up on the red track, you get points. And as you go up on the green track, you get cacao. In my mind, I tend to, every game I've played, I undervalue the blue track. And I should have not done that because I was going for this mask strategy. And I would have scored another 15 points. I also didn't quite get enough masks because the cool thing of the masks is they're cumulative, right? You get points for them geometrically. So 1 is worth 1, 2 different ones is worth 3, and then 6, 10, 15, 21. And if I had gotten like 1 more each round, that would have been a good chunk of points. And then if I had gotten that particular temple bonus tile at the end of the game, that would have been another 21 points. So,
Matt, in the game that you're referencing, we've talked about the 2 endgame conditions, right? So either it's a time-based end, 3 seasons, or the temple is finished. So in the game that you're referencing, it went the full time. Okay. So that's just an important thing to understand when you're talking about some of these endgame scoring things. A lot of that can be flipped on its head if the game ends, I don't know, like 6 turns earlier than you think the time would have ended.
And Nick did that my first game, and it really sucked. And I'm not bitter about it because I did much better in the second game, but having all the turns and not feeling rushed felt a little bit better than realizing he's just going to push this to the end and I've got 0 options. Like my last 30 minutes because of the freaking AP was misery, just waiting to end the game because I knew he was doing it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty interesting how you can kind of have an effect on the tempo of the game. So basically, whenever one of your dice ascends, whenever they go from a 5 to a 6, it advances the time track. Kind of like in Zolkin, when you take the first player location, you can choose to advance the wheel or the gears 2 spaces instead of 1. And having some control over that and having an ability to mess people up with their planning, like, oh, I've got 3 more turns. Oh no, I only have 2 more turns now. Can be pretty frustrating. It's frustrating in Zolkin, it's frustrating here, but it's also something I kind of like. Yeah, so in my 4 plays, only the first game did we end the game by building the temple. All other games have gone to time. But again, you have less time than you think because every time somebody ages out, that shortens the game a bit. So
in Nick and I's game, we did play 4 players, and so that, I think, caused the game to end quicker because we were all doing some building. In the 3-player game, we were hitting it pretty hard, and we still didn't make it all that far up. So in a 3-player game, we couldn't really devote as many actions to that. So I think that maybe player count probably matters on how that temple is going to develop.
Well, just a quick point on that. So in that 3-player game of ours, I actually only built 1 of the temple tiles. I was building a lot of the temple steps because I had the technology that gave me 4 points whenever I did that. But I made a choice not to do that too much, just to kind of try out something different.
So I think what really informs that is if that technology is available. So in the games where the temple gets built, I'm going to bet that it was an option in yours. It definitely wasn't the option where we finished it by building the temple, was the technology that gave a bonus for every temple build was there. So, I mean, that's really, I think, is more important than the player count.
In ours, we had two of the ones. One that gives you a bump in the temple, and one that gives you the plus resource and die. Both of those were there, and I knew I was going to do that because Nick did that in our last game, and it worked really well. So it worked.
So let me ask you this: can you ignore technology in this game? Like, can you just be like, I'm going to get none or one? Can you do that?
I think you don't have to go for all the tech, but I think you have to analyze what tech is on the table at the beginning and figure out which couple you want to get that matches with your strategy. Because you can't really have any strategy and ignore tech completely and end up being competitive in scoring, I believe.
I think tech is a necessity because you have to find those incremental bonuses. Because when you look at the resource tracks and how you get it, and you'll explain it in the overview on the rules, but so if you put a one die down and it's a 1 pip, you're getting almost nothing there, right? So if you can do anything to either reduce a resource or give you an extra cacao or give you a point or anything that gives you just those little bumps very early in the game are extremely powerful, and they set you up so that you're not like my first game I was struggling to find resources. This one I didn't have a problem at all because I had picked those particular techs.
So I would also say that even if you don't think you're interested in the tech, but you know other people are going to be, getting the tech first will get you bonuses every time someone else buys it. So in a 4-player game, if you buy the tech first, I think it's 3 points per buy when someone buys it on top of you. So just buying that tech is going to be a kickback of up to 9 points, especially if you know it's a high demand tech. So even if you don't need the tech, that's a very cheap way to get points on the board.
And I think too, like, obviously you get some incremental advantage. Obviously, if you're early, you're going to get a bunch of points potentially, but also it gives you a bump on a particular temple track, which can give you some other bonus. So like, I've seen some things online where people are like, well, you just have to, there's a technology strategy and whoever does technology the best is the winner. I don't think it's a strategy. I think it's just a necessity of the game. I remember like when we were playing the pawn, like we thought that the area control element was one of the paths to victory, but it's like, no, that's kind of the point of Nippon. And so I'm not saying that technology is the point of the game, but I think if you're going to ignore it, I don't know, maybe there's people out there that have done well with very little to no technology, but I kind of find that hard to believe.
I would think that you also have to consider that the top tier of the technology track you can't get to without doing some other things on the board, because you've got to grow your dice to the point where they're a 4 or a 5 or get there with 2 dice at the same time, and those resource costs to buy those are higher. So you can't just blitz all the technologies. You're going to have to be doing something else on the board to gain that resource mechanic to support that.
So as far as like the basic mechanic of the game, the rondel, the dice placement, how did that work for you guys?
I really enjoy rondels. I like the planning that you have to do, and one of the things I think is for me a superior play experience is looking at what people are doing and being able to see what they're doing and where they might go, and kind of planning for them to, okay, when they're there, then I'm going to go there and hit that. And I enjoy that aspect of it. I enjoy the fact that you can only go 3 spaces, and both games, I'm not saying this is a D strategy, but both games, when I retired a guy, or maybe sacrificed in this game, I haven't read the rules on how much damage I'm doing to these people, but when you retire them or whatever, you get a bonus where you can get an extra worker, and I find that that's extremely useful because you can lock up one worker in a temple if you want. You can place them on the other side of the board waiting for an opportunity. And honestly, you keep them at a 1, it only costs 1 cacao. So it's a 3 cacao to give you a lot more opportunities to either get a bunch of cacao or get yourself in a position to take advantage of something good. So I don't know. I mean, I think I forgot my point. What did we ask? Oh, the rondel mechanic, right. Sorry, I'm tired and I got a flu shot and I'm not feeling great, okay?
And I think I was saying you should get a flu shot every Wednesday because maybe it just eliminates your AP.
It certainly makes me not care because I'm so tired right now. So maybe, I should definitely get a flu shot every week. Thanks, Sean. But no, like, so the rondelle mechanic I think it's really good. It's one of the things that attracted me to this game was that rondelle mechanic, and I think it's just a really good mechanic for me.
You're not ripping on this game as much as I thought you were going to be.
We haven't told me to. You asked me very specific things that I like about the game. I will tell you the things I don't like in a little bit.
Okay. All right. What do you think about the rondelle?
So what I really liked about this implementation of the rondelle was the shifting efficiency weights of the moves. So the efficiency weight of a space is changing almost every turn for how many dice are there, how expensive your dice are when they move. So whether or not you're moving a high value die or a low value die into a space, how many dice are there. I mean, it both constrained the movements, but because you could go up to 3 spaces from any current dice position, you have quite a few options available. So I think it both constrained and gave options and used the rondelle mechanic.
Yeah, I think that's, in some ways, that's the hard part of the game, is that there are so many options, because you have to pick, okay, which die am I moving? Where am I moving that die to? What are the cost benefits of doing that? Because maybe you're thinking, I really need to take this build temple action, and you're ready to do it. You have all your resources, and then right before your turn, you realize, oh wait, everybody has a die there, which means it's going to be cost prohibitive in the cacao I have to pay. Maybe you don't have it, or maybe you're just not willing to spend that much, and so you say, okay, well I'll kind of dirtle and do some other things to see if that space thins out. Sometimes it does, and sometimes it doesn't for enough turns, and you're realizing, oh shoot, I have to go do that anyway, even though it's not cost effective. Or you might say, well, I really need to take this particular action, but oh shoot, someone went to this other spot, and now there's a bunch of dice there, and I don't care about that spot, but I can go get a bunch of cacao. And so I think that's pretty interesting. I think just the sheer number of choices you have, right? Which die am I going to use based on its position, based on its value, based on the value of the other die that I'm going to? Am I doing the actual action in a particular space, or am I taking, the worship action at the alternate worship action there? Am I spending to take both the top part of the worship and the bottom, get the discovery tile? In a lot of ways, there are a lot of choices, but I think that after you've played a couple times, every turn you've got it narrowed down to like 2 or 3 out of like 20 different things you could do. You know that there are probably a top 2 or 3 things you should be doing.
Yeah, my first game, I was really kind of lost in all the things I should do, and so I did a lot of inefficient stuff. But I'll be honest, like if you have a 1-pip die, you're kind of just trying to find something to do with that to level it up, right? Because it's not a very effective resource getter. So you don't think like one pip dies are not going to be for based on what you're looking at, depends on like what you really want to do with it. So there's a lot of actions I can just discount completely based on the 1-pip die. I'm like, okay, well I can't really do any of that. Then you're looking at like when you're talking about the temples, you're like, okay, is that something can I pay for? 2, do I want it? Right? And so you can discount a lot of what happens in the temple really quick. Like a lot of people do not want to lock up their dies. So that's not going to change like a huge amount. So I don't think the decision tree here is very hard as long as you have enough of different types of resources to take advantage of a situation. If you're resource starved or cacao starved, I mean, you're going to be struggling the whole game. So as long as you manage that aspect, I don't know that there's a whole lot of decisions. You're just looking at it as, okay, well, this is the optimal. It's obvious it's the optimal decision. Like I don't think these decisions are very difficult.
I agree. I think those same decisions you're talking about they're tactical one-time decisions, right? So as it rotates around you, now that small decision tree with the weighted efficiencies is present and clear. Now, that same tree wasn't clear 3 turns while you were waiting to take your turn and making your plan, but the moment it became your turn, that efficiency is clear.
All right, Matthew, what'd you hate about this game?
All right, so I don't love the randomness in this game. And I know you're looking at me, but so there's randomness in the tiles that you draw to build the temple up. There's randomness in the tiles you draw for the decoration. There's randomness in the tiles, and I don't know what you call the ones that are in the temple.
The discovery tiles?
Discovery tiles. There's randomness in those, okay? I don't hate the random. Like it wasn't really off-putting to me. because I was still able to find something to do. But my first game, I wasn't really seeing the ones I needed. I also didn't really know the ones I needed either. The second game, I really kind of cherry-picked kind of some of the ones. I could just ignore masks. You know what I mean? So I just kept looking for some things that give me these incremental bonuses and try to hit them. And so, if those hadn't come out at the right time or the right place, like that would have kind of really put a damper on it. And the fact that like my first game, I wasn't ever getting the temple tiles that have the color of the temple on there instead of a black color, right? Because you only get the bump up in the temple if you have the color one. And Nick kept stealing those and his strategy, taking those away, and I could never catch up on that. This time, I was able to get a few. But still, like if someone can really just get those extra incremental bonuses based on turn order and how it pops out, like, there's nothing you can do about a run of bad luck in this game. You're just going to have to take less optimal options, and over time I think it may hurt you a lot more.
So that definitely that point's valid, and I think that there's a couple of times that I can recall one particular one where something was revealed due to that random nature that became a horribly efficient move, and I watched it go by 2 players, and I'm thinking like, Jared, just don't move there, just don't see that is now a horribly efficient move. And he had already his strategy in mind, which was a good move that he made, and then left this thing open that made me forget what I was going to do because the efficiency was just there. So that random nature can work both for you and against you. Like if you open up the blinders and see, oh, this new tile just got revealed way over there, do I need to go for that? So that's where that can be kind of mitigated. I don't know if it eliminates it.
So randomness, that's it? Is that it?
Nope, that is not it. I think while I like all the colors and everything on the board, I think it's way too busy with things going on. I think it's hard to see. I think multiple plays will help mitigate that. But I mean, like a first-time teach on this is rough. Okay, and it didn't leave a great taste in my mouth after that. And just trying to understand it and constantly trying to refer things and like, okay, how does this mechanic work again? Like it was like the second time around, I asked it a few times, but it wasn't terrible. So I'm just saying, like, it's really overwhelming, and you have to kind of play it a few times to get into it. That's fine. The other thing I didn't like is the AP. I wasn't struggling with this, which is kind of rare, but I'll tell you what, even my AP in this game was really irritating. I didn't even care about building the temple and trying to find it, like the right optimal thing. I'm like, hey, everyone, just tell me which one is the right one, because I don't want to do the work. I'm doing the action because I can get some stuff off of it, but I don't want to do the work on building the temple. I just want people to tell me what to do there. You know what I mean? And I think it behooves the table to help whoever just do it, so we're not sitting there for 10 minutes trying to analyze everything, because if you don't have spatial abilities, it's gonna take forever. The AP is also present when you're trying to find that optimal move. Now, like I said, I wasn't having problems finding that, but I think I learned from the first and second game is like, you just give yourself a couple choices, and I think you'll be able to move a lot quicker. So if you get yourself stuck in a bind and you can't get yourself out of a rut, which is what happened with Matt, like it's misery. It was misery waiting for him. Like he's never that bad at AP. It's usually me, and here I was just busting on him about it, and he was just stuck so many times, and he could not get himself out of a rut. Now, I don't know if that was luck of the draw. I don't know if that was him just not seeing optimal moves. I don't know if he really had a plan and he was really trying to force that plan to me. Like, I don't know what it was, but it took an extra 20 minutes waiting for him to play, and that was just like, come on, man, hurry up. Like,
well, Matt's own motto is he's bad at board games.
Yeah, no, it is, but he's really not bad at board games. He's really quite good. But I mean, I'm just saying though, like there's like AP is so prevalent in this game. I think it's just going to happen a lot for not everyone, but AP in this game is misery. I do not like that.
So I will say that my biggest gripe with the game is something you mentioned, and that is the temple tile placement, because it has this pattern recognition and matching requirement. And so while this is the spiritual successor to Tzolk'in, in a lot of ways there are some elements from another NSKN game, Praetor, which is one of the reasons I really wanted Alex to review this, was because he hated Praetor. He gave it a 1. Part of that was the experience, and part of that's because I completely broke the game and found a really exploitable loophole, which has been fixed in theory. But anyway, so two things. One, there is the gaining experience on your dice, which makes them better, and then having them ascend or retire, as in Praetor. So I knew that might trigger some things for him. And then also there is that, like I said, the temple tile placement and matching, which is, it just can grind the game to a halt. And Praetor had that where when you place a new tile in the town or the city or whatever, you're trying to match these little corner patterns, and you get some bonus points. And in some ways, it feels incidental. It feels like you're doing the best with what you've got, and everyone's trying to help you, because otherwise you're gonna, this game of like what can be some quick turns grinds to a halt because you're trying to get 4 points instead of 3 points. And sometimes you're just like, okay, I need to build because I'm going to get bonuses from my technology, or I need the points on, the building track itself for end of season scoring. And so you're going to build less optimal tiles, but then sometimes there are really good tiles and people are kind of fighting to get those. But ultimately it bogged down the game and slowed down the game. Not to the point where it's going to affect my score. It was my number one game of last year, but that would be my biggest complaint of the game, is that pattern recognition.
I did want to say, and I'll let Nick talk here in a minute. He's been so quiet and patient over there. But this really reminded me of another NSKN game as well, of Versailles, which Sean, Raquel, and I played. And was it Danny Diamond?
Yeah, Daniel. Yeah, I played it like 4 or 5 times. I think you played it at least 2 times.
I think I played it once, and then I was banned from playing that game ever again because, well, I'll get to that point. But the things that reminded me, it felt like, so the thing about, and you can look up and read about Versailles if you're really interested, but what it had similar was this rondelle mechanic. It had this ability to push the pace. You had decorations. You had, I don't remember any tech things in there, but basically, ultimately it felt like 2/3 of a game, and it didn't quite like end game very well. Like the end game was just kind of not there. This is much better developed. And I think for me, it's a direct connection where they said, look, if we just do a couple more things on this Versailles, I think it's going to be a really solid game. And I think overall they improved upon what I see as a direct connection. I don't know. I haven't played Praetor, so I don't know. So I think, from that respect, you can see the NSKN stamp on their style of game.
So before we run too far away from building the pyramid, normally in games like this, it's kind of socially uncouth outside of teaching to be telling someone else how to take their turn or what to do on their turn. Teaching, that's one thing, but once you're into the game, when it becomes Matt's turn, I don't tell him, no, you need to do this. That's creates not a fun environment to play the game in. Where naturally, when you're taking the pyramid build action, the game lends itself to sort of turning into a collaborative effort there to speed it up, like you said. Otherwise, you're sitting there trying to fit the best tile and flopping back and forth with tiles. And I don't think I like that. I think the fact that mechanic basically turns that interplay. I mean, it's not a cooperative game. It shouldn't be a cooperative game, but it's forcing a cooperative action to help Sean get one more point, 3 to 4 points versus that 4 or 5 points. So I think that kind of disrupts the flow of the game. The average turn can take, 5-10 seconds, maybe a minute if someone is looking at math, unless it's a turn where you're building on the central pyramid. So I've seen those take 3 or 4 minutes, I think, near the beginning when we were trying to rotate tiles, flip them around, and that could have been smoothed out a little bit, either by preventing the rotation of tiles or reducing the number of icons to match. So I think that really disrupts the flow of the game, is the use of that space.
And I want to say that if somebody is going to get all like anal about getting help on placing tiles in my game, I am going to cut them, because it's going to make the game take way too long. Like that is my other gripe about this, is like you really, if someone's going to really AP this up, like I don't want to play that game. It'll always be a pass on someone who I think can't handle the AP. And so that kind of limits its play a little bit for me. So that's my other gripe, is I want to play with people I enjoy with. And, for the most part, that's happened. But the AP is, regardless of who's playing, even Matt, like I was just like, ugh. But luckily, like he and I give each other crap, so it's okay. Like he didn't like threaten me or anything this time, so it was okay. It worked out.
All right. Well, let's talk about the theme. In your estimation, was this a thematic experience?
So to some extent, yes. Generally, if a point salad game is not old world Europe themed, it automatically gets a bump in my book because there are so many old world Europe variety themes, and this is not old world Europe. So initially, like when you put those stacks of tiles on the center of the board, you have these icons that match. It definitely seems to exude theme. I mean, to some extent, you can abstractify any game if you really want to, but I think they tried their best to sort of be as true to the theme as possible. And to me, it shows, and I would give a mental bump to it for not using sheep in Old World Europe.
So I disagree with everything Nick just said. I think this has no theme. I think what they did is they said, well, I think I want to build a pyramid. I guess we could do Egypt, but hey, let's just do Mesoamerica or whatever. And they started with that, and suddenly you've got this whole culture that they've tried to build into this track. And I think they did it because of the mechanics. I don't think because they love the theme. I think it just made sense for them. So I don't think it's thematic at all. And I think just using iconography that mimics that doesn't make it thematic. And I mean, ascending, is that really what's in the rule book? I mean, you're sacrificing these people. That's what I think that was a very common practice there, right?
Well, yeah, but they're gaining experience. They're just getting older. They're getting older and then they die.
Right. So, but I don't know. I need to read all that stuff, but it seems like that's just a nice way to say we're going to sacrifice to the gods and the gods are going to give us a benefit for that sacrifice. Because my history could be completely wrong on this, but I feel like that was what they were doing. And I think they took aspects of it and tried to make it work. But overall, like, I don't think this is necessarily thematic. I think they created the theme because they wanted the mechanics in there.
Well, I mean, with most midweight to midweight heavy Euros, I mean, I think you could, for the most part, take out the theme and put some other theme on it, right? I mean, this could have been Egypt, right? You could, instead of the blue, red, green temple tracks, you've got the Osiris track and you've got the Set track and you've whatever. But I don't know. I think it's thematic in that it could be any pyramidal focused culture.
You mean ziggurat?
Are they ziggurats?
Yeah, ziggurats are stepped.
No, but so are the Egyptian pyramids. They're not smooth. They're not.
They were smooth back in the day.
Oh, because they had the outer casing on. Yeah. All right. Well, that's fine.
Let me say, because I made a reference to Versailles. I mean, technically, it could have been building something at Versailles in an abstracted way too, and still be fine. Like I think they were just in love with a pyramid. I really do.
All right, well, let's look at what the guild had to say. Jimmy DM90 said, played it twice. First game, one player crushed the rest of us, nearly lapping the player in fourth by grabbing all the building upgrades early and just going to town building all the cheap pyramid spaces. In my second game, I tried the strategy and achieved nearly identical results, so I have to wonder about the balancing. I don't know. What do you guys think?
Okay, so Nick, in our game with Nick, he was clearly the leader. He stayed the leader. Jared did a really good job of catching up. He was still a pretty big gulf there, but he did a good job trying to catch up. And Matt and I, when we played that game, we were just wondering what we were doing here. The second game, I was ahead at every point. I was able to stay ahead, and I wasn't sure that y'all were going to catch me that last thing. So I think there might be a problem with someone getting ahead, and it wasn't close. 2 games have not been close.
So in all of the, I'm trying to remember our first game, Nick. I can't quite remember it, but in other games that I've played of it, there's been plenty of jockeying for position, I think.
I think the spread between the leader and the second place, not necessarily the rest of the field, in our first game was like 5 or 7 points, because the multipliers at the end all of a sudden made it closer. And then the game that you referenced with Jared, he was nipping at my heels. So it came down to like a single scoring execution of like 4 points or 5 points that actually made the difference. So I don't disagree that the field became very dispersed, but I always felt like there was somebody nipping at my heels on the score track.
And I want to say, in that particular game, you had two newbies playing the game, and if we had known to maybe dilute the Street of the Dead,
Avenue of the Dead,
or maybe put some of the tech in the right place to help dilute your ability to do stuff, then it would have been a lot closer. So maybe there's this learning curve where, if you have one person, maybe will let someone else get ahead more than they should. Maybe that's what I'm trying to get.
So Philip Millman says, I've played it 4 times, and it is the top 2 for 2018. It is a point salad far more enjoyable than any Feld I've played. I enjoy the heck out of it, and currently it's a mid-5 on the Ducal scale. And then Brett Mowers says, I've got 1 play of this at 2 players. I thought it was good, but not great. Based on what Sean has stated about it possibly being much better at 3 to 4, I'm very interested in trying it at a higher player count. I enjoy Zolkin and can see why people like this one so much. Hard to rate after 1 play, but I would guess I would put this in the 4 range for me. And yeah, for me, I think 3 is probably the sweet spot. I was not crazy about this at 2. 4, there seemed to be a little bit too much downtime in between turns, even as quick as some of the games could be. But I really like this at 3. I think it's pretty snappy at 3. And 2 was just too snappy. Like, it was just too quick. It was just over, and it just didn't feel like you were doing as much at 2 players. And then Chad Jacobson says, Teotihuacan is the best value of 2018. All that variability and plenty of clever combo goodness makes this a Ducal 5. Some have said it's not balanced, but we haven't found that to be so. However, strategies are highly dependent on board layout and opponent behavior. You better not let someone monopolize those god tracks. Sylvain Lacroix says, first of all, I love Zolkin, and even if the game is completely different, it shares some of the DNA, such as designer and theme. Components are great, and even if the board looks busy at first, everything is really clear. It's a fun game that offers lots of replayability since the board offers a lot of options. In the end, it's a very good game, but not better than its daddy Zolkin. I would give it a high 4 on the Ducal scale.
So I think looking at which technology tiles come out at the beginning of the game really sets the gears you're going to put in motion for the game. So I think that the variability is there. Now, there's a lot of the other action spaces are going to be quite static. So there's some variability. So it's not going to be sitting down to play the exact same game because you've changed a few of the random tiles. But I think the technology is your ability to shift that variability in play.
And then Evan S. says, my affinity for Teotihuacan has fallen with each of my 3 plays. On my first play, I thought the dice mechanic, Matthew's cheering you on, Evan. On my first play, I thought the dice mechanic was so novel and fresh, I was instantly enamored. But the second time I played it, someone rushed to the tech spot, acquired multiple techs on their first 3 to 4 turns, and ran away with the game. On the third play, there was no runaway leader problem, but acquiring technologies remained critical in who won the game. Regardless of whether the path to victory leads to the tech tree like many other Euros, each play has felt more tactical and less strategic than the last. The need to pay cacao for any action where colored dice are already present really changes the dynamic of the game to one where short-term plans are imperative and you just hope that what is best to do in the short term doesn't greatly alter what you want to do in the long term. I still enjoy my plays, but this game has fallen solidly into the low 4 range on the Ducal scale. All right, well, let's go into final thoughts. Here, let's roll the die to see who goes first. How about that? Ready? Okay. Well, I guess I'm going to go first. I rolled a 6. Matthew rolled a 5. Nick, you rolled a 4. You never actually rolled the dice in this game, but we just made our own little mini game for it. So since I rolled a 6, that's pretty fortuitous because I give this game a 6. It's an all-time favorite that's a contender for the top 10. By the way, we rate things here. The Duke's Dice on a 6-point scale. A 1 is terrible, awful, burn it with fire, and a 6 is an all-time favorite contender for the top 10. It was my number 1 game of 2018. It has the same kind of DNA as Zolkin, which is a game that I've always loved. And I get some of those same feelings from Zolkin, but it's very much different enough. In some ways, I think it is more complex than Tzolk'in. And I think it's great. I think this is a fantastic game. I've said quite a bit about it in previous episodes. But yeah, it's a very strong 6 for me. Matthew, since you rolled a 5, are you going to give it a 5?
I'm going to do some math on that. And I'm going to give it a 3. My first play was not good. I still would have given it a 3 at that first play because I could see a lot of potential in it. My second play, I don't know that there's a whole lot to explore here. I think it's mostly a reactionary game. Once you kind of know that, look, I'm just going to hit here and there and there. And those are going to give me the bulk of my points, and then I'm just going to make the rest of it up and trying to be tactically sound in what I do. I think that's all you're doing. I think that's pleasant-ish. I think that's fine. I don't know that there's any real challenges here. I think the biggest challenge for me is to, 1, not play with people who are in a learning game, 2, not play with people who have major amounts of AP, and 3, play with people I don't like playing with. So I think there's like 5 people I can play this game with.
You sound so sassy right now. I like it. And by the way, a 3 is game was okay, not exciting. We'll play in the right situation. And I think that kind of sums up your thoughts, right?
Yeah, I think so. I'm probably not on Wednesdays going to want to play this ever again. If you want to do a game, because there's so many other great games to play. Like especially on a Wednesday, there's so many things coming in and out. Like I don't think I want to waste my time playing this game anymore. Unless it's like it's an appointment game. Like, say, look, let's just try this and play it. Like, yeah, I got nothing else to do. It's never going to happen because there's like 1,000 games coming out every week, right? I can't keep up. So probably won't ever play this again.
Okay, fair enough. Nick?
So final thoughts, I just want to bring up one thing we didn't hit was the couple of games I did play was with Jared's blinged out copy. So he had converted the dice to what are called slice dice. So it's like a stack of 5 magnetically attached layers, and you would remove the layer and move it around. And he even put like the design of each faction on there, and it was absolutely a beautiful copy to play this with. Now, in general, I look at this game and say it's complex, not complicated. So there's a bunch of simple mechanics all combined together. No one of the mechanics is overly difficult to teach or understand, but they've just thrown together a whole bunch of different things. All individually, easy to explain, easy to teach. Combined together in one set of sitting there and teaching, it's a rough teach. So not as rough with someone who's super familiar with midweight Euros, but as you get away from that level of familiarity, this teach becomes harder and harder. So if you can say, oh, remember this temple track mechanic, it's just like Tzolk'in. Okay. All right, check. No need to teach that. But if someone is not familiar with any of these, man, it's an overwhelming teach. So that's what leads me to my rating. So I've been thinking about most of the podcast on whether or not it should be a 4 or a 5. So that's where I'm between. And generally for me, the 5, I set the bar as it's going to be purchased and in my collection, which matches. So at a 4, I know it's going to be available amongst the duchy. So it's, man, I'd love to give a decimal point, but I know that is against the rules. So I think I'm going to give it a 5 because I can imagine if I can twist someone's arm to give me a discount on it, it's probably going to be in my collection. So I'll end up with a 5, but after a few more plays or the attempt to teach it, I may downgrade it to a 4.
And a 5, for the record, is a great game, will rarely turn down a play of it. So, yeah, the teach is rough, but I feel like I got a pretty good teach. Like, I was able to teach Raquel in a good 15 minutes.
But you're really good at teaching these kind of games, Sean.
Sure. Okay. I'll take that.
Way to suck up, Nick.
All right. Well, that's going to do it for the Duke's review of Teotihuacan from NSKN Games. It was a 6 from Sean, a 3 from Matthew, and a 5 from Nick.
You are listening to the Dukes of Dice, proud members of the Dice Tower Network. For other great shows in the network, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. Back to Alex and Sean for this week's Dukes Double Take.
Finally today, our Duke's Double Take from episode 169, Bonnie and Fried. And Sean, in that episode, we were talking about the game Clans of Caledonia. And at the time, Sean, you gave this one a 3. You said it had some good things going for it, but really, at heart, if you want to play this kind of game, you really wanted to play more of a Terra Mystica or a Gaia project. This wasn't going to be your go-to. Wasn't anything particularly wrong with the game, it just didn't stand out for you. I gave this one a 4. I said it hit the sweet spot. All of this kind of fit together. It wouldn't typically be my kind of game, but this actually kind of grew on me. But I did also say, as part of that I was curious if this was going to slip from a 4 to a 3 a year later. I would be curious if I'd played this a year later. Sean, have you played this a year later?
No. In fact, I got rid of my copy. I Kickstarted this, and after a review, I'm like, no, I'm good. I got rid of it at one of the gamer garage sales.
Okay. Well, makes sense. And I haven't played it either. And I'm going to actually read one of the guild thoughts in thinking about this, because it pretty well echoes my thoughts, which is Chad Jacobson's. I still own Clans of Caledonia, but it just never comes out. While I appreciate the market manipulation of the game, I can never bring myself to choose Clans over Gaia Project with its much more interesting decisions. Now, to be clear, I, Alex, haven't played Gaia Project, but it just isn't one that's come out to the table for me. And he follows that up with saying, I guess it's a 4 since I still own it, but I might not notice if you took it from me. And quite frankly, this is a game I haven't really thought about. It's not a game that's come up. I've glanced at it occasionally at Jamie's, but it just isn't one that I've had a strong desire to play. I did mention in the review, if it's set up on the table, people are going to play it. I wouldn't say no to it. I enjoyed the play of this, and I think it's a very solid game. Anyone who has a very high opinion of this, not surprised by that at all. But it's one that just kind of gets lost in the shuffle for me. It wasn't anything special enough to come back out. And because part of the criteria of a 3 is game is not exciting, we'll play in the right situation. And I had this inkling of, I'd like to have this one around or have access to this one. And I don't quite feel that way about this anymore. It's just kind of fallen off the radar. It's one of those games that is kind of the reason we do a double take, to see how we feel about this a year later. And I think this is a perfect example of that. I was excited about it in the moment, and right now, it's kind of fallen off the radar. So that being said, that hasn't been true for the Guild. The Guild had quite a few thoughts about this, some of them very, very positive. Jimmy DM90 said, it's a top 15 game for me. Doesn't do anything particularly original, but the pieces come together in such a smooth and satisfying way that the game is more than the sum of its parts.
And then Philip Millman says, Clans of Caledonia is a top 20 for me, and I really enjoy that it brings in many of the aspects of Terra Mystica that I like with a market price movement, which I really enjoy.
Brett Maurer says, after about 10 plays of this one, I still find it holds up well. It's more accessible than Terra Mystica, yet still provides the satisfaction of placing your buildings, livestock, and creating an income engine. The market track is nice and really rewards players for taking advantage of a perfectly timed buy or sell. My only complaint is the components are strangely small for seemingly no reason. I give it a high 4. He's not wrong about the components. There's no doubt about that.
Sylvain Lacroix says, well, this one is an incredible game. I love the variable market, the placement on the board, and the fact that the game is incredibly smooth. This is a real gem that features in my top 20. I will give this one a high 5. Usually 6s are only for my top 10-ish.
Evan says, at first I thought it was a less interesting Gaia project, which is kind of what Sean feels. But the more I play it, the more the depth has been revealed. After 3 plays, I now think this is a highly engaging game with tons of strategic depth and a little bit more accessibility than a Gaia project, so it hits the table more. It's also its own animal with the market, something Gaia project doesn't have. How you use the market to execute trade actions via neighborhood bonuses is critical to winning the game. Clans is a high 5 for me. High 5, Sean. Almost a 6.
And then finally, Adam Dalton says, 1 play, and I've not gone back to it. I appreciate the effort at smaller box and thus smaller pieces, but it annoyed me. I like the game just fine, but at the same time, I haven't ever requested it again when I've been over at the friend's place who owns it. For him, it's a 3 out of 6 on the Ducal scale. And yeah, that bugged me. Like, it was so hard to pack the game back together. Like, it was such a small box size. It was, anyway. So yeah, it's a fine game. And I think it's, sure.
Sure. All right, well, that's the Duke's double take of Clans of Caledonia. Sean, you're staying at a 3 on this one? I didn't actually ask. I just started ending the thing. So, 3?
Yes, it's still a 3.
All right, there we go. It's still a 3 for me, too. Oh, wait, not still a 3. It drops from a 4 to a 3 for me. Man, oh man, has this been sloppy. It gets a from the Dukes. All right, before we wrap up, though, Sean, the rest of the top 6 episode names for this week. The first one from Jimmy DM90. I'm walking on sunshine. Whoa, and time to feel good. Hey! It's not the whole thing, it's just the walking on sunshine part. That would have been my pick for episode title, but Sean absolutely refused, would have quit the show if we named the episode that.
I wasn't going to quit the show. I was just going to cancel the episode.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
So first off, here are my 2 issues with it. Number 1, the sunshine has nothing to do with anything, right? We've established that. Number 2, no, sorry, Jimmy, this is not an attack on you.
It sounds like it. Sounds like you're going after a valued listener.
But if it were Teotihuacan on sunshine, then I think I would have liked it a little bit more.
Nah, I liked it better without the Teo.
I know, but why cut it off?
Because it sounds catchier. Because the line of the song isn't "I'm Teotihuacan on sunshine."
Oh, really? We don't just straight up just take the song titles as is. We actually modify them and change them to turn them into something that fits with the game. Yes, thank you. Like with our actual episode title, TeotiTartan, you're combining 2 words, it's a portmanteau, right? This just kind of cut the word in half. Just chopped it in half, Alex.
I thought it was a brilliant move, Jimmy, and you're my best friend.
All right. Well, you, Jimmy DM90, are now my arch rival and nemesis. So, yeah.
Yeah, take that, Jimmy. You're on blast from at least one part of the Dukes.
Okay. Anyway, Kyle Kelly suggested Total Eclipse of the Braveheart, which actually was my top choice. Because you got the Scottish clans with Braveheart and then Total Eclipse, because Teotihuacan, there's this whole eclipse thing that occurs that signals the end of the season changes. So I liked it a lot. But instead, we had our consensus choice, because you and I, Alex, we can compromise, unlike other people who will remain nameless.
Or entire governments. Anyway, next up, this one takes, all right, every now and then we get these names that take a couple of leaps, and we got a couple of these back to back. So Baker Mitchell had the name Mississippi Mudslide. And the reason he had that name was because the component parts of that include chocolate, cocoa, Teotihuacan, and whiskey or bourbon, hence Clans of Caledonia. Pretty clever. Pretty clever, Baker.
And then Blaine Miley suggested Remember Me. This one also required a couple leaps.
Yeah, no, it's very convoluted. It's referring to the Disney Pixar movie Coco. Sean, have you seen Coco?
I have. Yeah, it's really
Okay.
good.
Yeah, I think so too. I really enjoyed that movie. So it's Remember Me is that kind of the main song from Coco, and it's referring to family concept in clans, clan being a family, and Coco in Teotihuacan. So hence you got Remember Me. A few leaps of logic, but pretty good. Pretty good. What's that? I don't even know that. I'm making a reference. I actually don't know what the reference is.
That's Curb Your Enthusiasm.
Oh, okay. I've seen an episode, I think.
Really? You've only seen an episode?
Just one episode.
Oh, wow.
I did see a clip recently of Judge Judy deciding a case on that episode.
All right.
So, anyway. All right, and then finally, BJ from Board Game Gumbo with the name Here I Am. Walk me like a Scottish clan. Referencing the Scorpions hit Rock You Like a Hurricane. So, walk me, HUAC, like a Scottish clan. Now, Sean, did you have the same issue with this being not the full word Teotihuacan, like a Scottish clan?
No.
Okay.
I can't tell you why.
All right, because it's doing the exact same thing.
Well, it's shorter, right?
Uh-huh.
But because it's a longer thing, I'm okay with abbreviating some of it.
Okay. Well, that makes no sense. Your argument makes no sense.
I can write a really long paper explaining this.
Sean, even the friendly Shoggoth thinks that makes no sense.
Who?
And the friendly Shoggoth makes no sense at all.
Who?
Hello, friends, it's me, the Shoggoth here.
I don't know who that is.
I've followed Alex over to his office from St. Louis Bread Company, not Panera here in beautiful St. Louis.
Huh.
How are you, Sean?
Is this a thing that we do on the show? Is this a bit?
Sean,
Yeah.
would you like some oolong tea?
No, not actually. With all of the drainage, I've got some like sinus thing going on right now. Maybe.
Well, let me go and make it. Oh, sorry, I'm out of oolong tea.
Well, one, we live in different states.
Well, maybe next time.
I'm just not familiar with this character of yours, Alex.
Okay, well, I'm gonna go now. Bye.
All right, well, that's going to do it for episode 194, TeotiTartan, which is fun to say. TeotiTartan, Alex. Can you say TeotiTartan? TeotiTartan 5 times fast? Go.
TeotiTartan, 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 TeotiTartan. That's not that hard.
All right. Thanks again to Rob Rouse for naming that episode title. That's fantastic, Rob. Until next time, this is Sean.
And also Alex.
And Duke you later, everybody.
Thank you so much for listening to The Dukes of Dice. Today's episode was recorded in the Duchy on January 31st, 2019. Our theme music provided by Carbohydro M from his Prime Legacy album. The Dukes of Dice are a proud member of the Dice Tower Network. For other great board gaming podcasts, check out DicetowerNetwork.com. And for all the ladies in the Duchy, go to DukesOfDice.com. Find us on Twitter at Dukes of Dice. Join in conversations on our Board Game Geek Guild. Find us on Facebook and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thanks to our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, and Game Toppers, LLC. Thanks to our sponsors, Tasty Minstrel Games, Arcane Wonders, and Game Toppers, LLC. You can learn more about TMG's games at PlayTMG.com. Arcane Wonders, find titles at ArcaneWonders.com, and learn all about Game Toppers at GameToppersLLC.com. We'll see you back here in 2 weeks. Until then, game on!